take a step back. You are living in the world. There are things happening around you that are totally out of your control. Don't wait. You have to be aware of them, but focus on what is in your control.
Welcome to Decision Point, a podcast about mental toughness and overcoming adversity in sales. I'm Brad Seeley. Today's conversation was sparked by a post that I saw on LinkedIn a while back. As I was scrolling through my feed, I saw a post from a guy named Samouelian. Al's the CEO at RPM, a logistics and supply chain company, and one of the fastest growing companies in America. He was also formerly the VP of Sales and Operations at Coyote Logistics. In the post, Al tells of a story of his 5-year-old daughter pulling a book off the bookshelf and placing it on his desk. The book was The 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do by Amy Morin. The list includes things like they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves, and they don't focus on things they can't control. In short, it sounded a lot like the kind of things that we've been talking about on the show. So I reached out to Al, and he agreed to join us on the show. We talked about the moment with his daughter and his journey from sales leader to organizational leader. But as the conversation progressed, we got into some other areas, including a truly impactful story about his late father, Big Al. Let's take a listen. Wow, that's a wild ride, because you guys have gone, are you 5 times now on the Inc. 500 list?
I think we're 7
times. That's pretty amazing to be able to keep that up year after year.
a lot of, I wish I could say it was easy and you sit back, but we grind really, really hard. We're the type of guys that roll up our sleeves and we work hard. We try to work smart. We try to build really deep, strategic, sticky relationships with our clients. We've been successful to this point, and we've attracted a wonderful executive team. So we've got some deep bench strength in all areas. So that's a positive thing. And we're going to continue to try to keep that trend. It's harder when you get this big. It's harder to grow at those percentages, but we're going to do our best to keep the momentum.
Now, how much of that? So when you think about you adopted or sort of evolved into the CEO role, do you see yourself as a sales guy, or do you see yourself as a more of an operations person?
That's an interesting question. I grew up, so if you looked at the titles that I've held in the past, I was definitely always more of a service. Think of it as an internal corporate development guy, right? I was looking to improve. In the beginning, my first role was all around process engineering and reporting and data analytics, and that role turned into financial controller of C.H. Robinson's largest branch office, which is Chicago Central. My next role was I was doing some corp dev for Matty Maroon in Detroit, and so I was looking. He had hundreds of companies that he owned, so I was analyzing those companies, and they had hopes of spinning different entities into public organizations, and so I helped them with a plan to merge. They had a contract logistics company, which was Logistics Insight. They had a automotive expedite company, CTX. They had an international freight forwarding company, Central Global Express. And then they had a, call it like a truck brokerage, but it was more of a asset light agent-based model, which was Universal Truckload Services. So today, Universal is a public company, and we basically merged all those companies. So I played more of we'll call it a corp dev strategy role there. And that was right about the same time that Jeff Silver had reached out for me to join the Coyote team, and it kind of sparked my interest. So I went back to Chicago to play the role at Coyote.
When you were hiring at Coyote, and it sounds like rocket ship there, and then there was a ton of hiring going on, and you guys were focusing on college kids. What was kind of the mindset? What were you looking at when you hired somebody? What characteristics were you guys looking for?
Yeah, the model was you know we were looking for one. Number one was competitive, right? So we hired a lot of um, kids that played college sports. We looked for intelligence, right? So we wanted really, really smart people that could analyze data, that could think quickly. We were looking for people that had personality, they could communicate, they were confident in their communication skills. They could listen, but they could rebuttal quickly. That was one of the secret sauces of Coyote. It was ran by Mary Ann Silver, and she put together a strong recruiting group. So they were very proactive in building relationships with the universities, especially the Big Ten. And they were big into marketing, social media, right? Really getting they had a big internship program. So they were trying to create this real hype around Coyote. And then, yeah, the recruiting staff was just they were in cahoots with all these universities and attended all the recruiting shows, and they did a wonderful job at attracting those right types of people. It was very defined on what they were looking for. They did a great job hiring the right types of people.
All right, well, good. So what sparked? When we reached out to you and said, "Hey, you made this post," which let's talk about that first. So you had put a post out by Amy Morin, I believe is her last name, on the thirteen things that mentally tough people don't do. Can you tell me a little bit about that story? Because it sounded like your daughter put that on your desk.
Yeah. I'm a true believer in the law of attraction, and she took that off my bookshelf. I honestly have never read the book. I don't even remember how I came into possession with the book, whether it was a gift or my wife picked it up. I'm not sure. But when it was the beginning of COVID, right? We were already transitioned working from home, so I was in my home office, and my daughter had pulled that randomly off the bookshelf, set it on my desk, and I was working away, and I glanced over at it, and it was a red book. It caught my eye, and I stared at it for a second. There's probably a million different things running through my head, right? What is going on with the economy? How am I going to stay in business? Right? Are my people effective working from home? There were so many unknowns at that moment, and it just hit me. And I read it, and I'm like, this is interesting. And I opened up the table of contents, and it was a very clear 13 bullet points of what mentally strong people don't do, and I adhere to all of them. And trust me, I'm not an expert at mental toughness, but I think from talking with me, you'll see kind of some grounded patterns in how I communicate and what I believe in. And I thought it was such a powerful, it was something from above that put this in my lap, and it was something that needed to be shared to the world. At that point, it was everything was going through the exact same challenges that myself and that RPM were going through. And I just, I felt the urge to put it out there. I believe in these things strongly, and I thought it was good advice. And it did. It got a lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of interaction, more than I actually expected. Um, so yeah, it was timing is everything. It was the right time for that book to appear in my lap.
So uh, when you posted this, what was there one or two of these that really stuck out that you felt like sort of resonated with you?
There's one. I think there's one really good concept, and it was the fourth one. They don't focus on things they can't control. I think that was like, to me, that was like the general underpinning of all of the other 13 points. Honestly, it's it's take a step back, You are living in the world. There are things happening around you that are totally out of your control. Don't wait. You have to be aware of them, but focus on what is in your control, right? So that's where you're looking for there's always a balance. There's a positive and there's a negative. Focus on what is in your control, right? Which are your thoughts, your actions, and looking at all the circumstances around you and finding a path to go get what you want. And so that's the one that really stuck out to me. And I choose to look at the positive side.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think there was one on here about maybe complaining or maybe controlling your emotions, but I think the one thing that in note with that, the one thing that complaining does is that it really takes your focus off what you can control and puts it on what you can't.
Yeah, yeah. Don't waste your time feeling sorry for yourself, right?
You mentioned you're not an expert on mental toughness. You obviously adhere to some of this stuff. It resonated with you. Do you think how you see the world? Does that come from your upbringing, or was there a specific event in your life that sort of transitioned your thinking around how you see the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a core, yeah, it was definitely the way I was raised. It started as a young kid, and that was instilled by my parents. Especially my father. My parents were divorced, and my father lived in Mexico. So it was as a kid, it was really tough on me. I had a challenge dealing with that. But my dad would call and my dad would visit. And I played soccer growing up as a kid, and he instilled in both my brother and I the belief system in ourselves that we could accomplish absolutely anything. And that I kind of take that with me in everything I've accomplished in life, right? I No one will outwork me. I will always have clear goals, and then I'm gonna figure out a way to accomplish those goals. And I think that's important in life. I think it's vital in sales.
How in the sales role, how hard do you think sales is?
Well, I think sales is, you know, it's extremely difficult, right? It it takes this individual, right? We kind of discussed earlier, like you got to be extremely intelligent. You got to be really passionate. You have to be able to hear the word no constantly. You got these professional procurement people that you're selling to, and again, it differs between if you're selling to consumers or businesses. I've spent my whole career selling to businesses, right? So you're going to hear no, and you're going to hear a million different objections, and you just have to have fun with it. You have to love the journey. You have to love every opportunity to talk with someone. You have to embrace that. And yeah, it's challenging. It's just getting people that are positive, that are motivated, that are competitive, that are goal oriented, and that love to talk to people. Sales is communication. In my world, when you're selling a service, it's communication. So you have to enjoy that journey. If you don't enjoy talking to people, it's not cut out for you. And so if you look at historically in my industry, people used to beat up the logistics industry that it was a chop shop. Well, it's not necessarily true. It's actually the reverse. It's just maybe we hired a lot of the wrong people that didn't have that drive, that didn't love communicating with other people, that didn't get off on someone saying no or throwing an objection at them, and it was uncomfortable for them. It just wasn't the right fit or role for them. It wasn't a chop shop. The people that were good at communicating, the good at building relationships, the good at servicing their client, good at overcoming objections, they've all been lifers in this industry and have made a lot of money, created a lot of wealth, created a lot of opportunity for themselves and their families. So, um, it does take hiring the right individual to be successful.
Now, was there anything specific that you guys do currently or you've done in the past to sort of weed that out? Because what's come up in every interview is really, an attachment to no. Like you got to get somebody who does, has stick to itiveness and they're not connected. No doesn't violate their ethos of
Yeah.
who they are.
That's a great question, and some of my past organizations definitely, leveraged different systems and tools to do that. At RPM, we've taken a different approach. So for the role of sales, I'm not hiring a bunch of kids out of school, right? We're looking for hyper growth, and with that, I know that it takes 2 to 3 years to really establish a young individual to be a strong sales representative. And so, I've leveraged my time in the industry and the strong relationships I've built. And so we try to look outside the box. We look for people that have experience to bring into our organization, or we found individuals that are not necessarily selling logistics, but they've had success selling other services or products. But they're tenured so that they have 5 to 10 years experience and they love the game of sales. And so, we're simply just recruiting the right types of people that are experienced in sales. And then they share our ethos, right? So they feel that, they dream big, they have, a wonderful personality. They're interesting. They care about things outside of work. That's important to us. They seem to be family oriented. That's another big thing we look for. And so we've taken a little different approach than what the companies I've worked at the past have done.
Is there anything specifically that we didn't ask that you want to talk about or cover?
Yeah, you did ask a question, or you guys had presented a question earlier. When you have to make a tough decision, what's the first thing you do?
Yeah, I'm glad you caught
And
that.
that that's one that hits home. Hopefully I can control myself here, but um, I do the same thing that I've always done, and I always looked up to my dad, uh, who's no longer with us. He passed away last year. um, Big Al was his name, and everything was sounded through Big Al. He wasn't he he was a procurement guy for Ford. He worked at Ford Motor Company for 30 years. And he was a great guy. He surrounded himself with amazing people. Um, I wouldn't say he was a scientist at sales. He never he never shared wisdom, if you will, but he was my sounding board. When I had something to share, I had a tough decision, or I accomplished something big, he was always the first call. And in his memory, when we buried him and we were giving the eulogy, I left his friends and our family with three things I thought he wanted to leave to everyone, and that was one, to dream really big, know exactly what you want, write it down, have a picture of it, but know what you're shooting for. Two is believe, and believe in something bigger than yourself. Establish your plan, your strategy, and believe it. Believe in that service that you're offering or that product that you're selling. You have to be passionate, and you have to 100% believe in what you're doing, and then never give up. You stick to your plan. You outwork your competition, and of course you measure and make adjustments when you're not achieving what you wanted to achieve. But dream big, believe, and never give up. That's what my father instilled in me, and I always have that discussion with him spiritually now versus face to face or over the phone. And like that book uh, magically dropping in my lap. Uh, you know, strange things happen for different reasons, but if you're clear in where you're going and what you want, things tend to fall into your lap.
All right, thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that. Um, okay, well, we're going to do, we got three more questions. I do this thing called the power play, and I'm going to ask you three questions and just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Al, are you ready for the power play?
I am indeed.
All right. Toughest decision you've ever had to make?
It just happened, laying off people that were new in our organization during COVID. Hands down, the toughest decision. They didn't have the time or the opportunity to make an impact, and being forced to make tough decisions right now. So that's been the toughest.
Tough. Biggest regret?
Biggest regret. Not challenging myself at sales earlier on in my career. As I told you earlier, I played more of an impact role, internal accounting, finance, reporting. Uh, Never believed that I could make an impact and create value for an industry or a company. And I'm doing it, you know, toward the later quarter of my career, and I love what I'm doing. I'm extremely passionate about getting in front of customers and helping customers. So that's probably my biggest regret, not doing it for a longer period.
All right. Born mentally tough or made mentally tough?
Made mentally tough for sure. Going back to the 13 things that mentally tough people don't do. I've spent time in my past feeling sorry for myself. Um, I focused on things that were totally out of my control. Um, I am a pleaser. I tend to try to please everybody. Um, Taking risks, going to being an entrepreneur today and being in business for myself. I was a corporate guy for a long time. I've dwelled on the past. Um, I've made the same mistakes over and over and over again, and so going down the list, it's you got to be aware. You got to focus. I think one thing that really helps me being mentally tough is taking the time to think. Understand your behaviors and how you're feeling. Understand your emotions and think about your thoughts, think about what's going on, and writing that stuff down. Like, sometimes there's not a clear path. You have to communicate with others, or you got to communicate with yourself, and write things down, and you will find the answers. The path will become clear.
All right. I do have one other question for you on, you said that your biggest regret was not challenging yourself enough in sales. What was the transition for you? Because it sounds like you had more of an operation execution background. What was the process for you to getting into sales?
It was joining this startup at RPM, right? So in a startup mentality, that's all you have. Is you have your we don't have outside funding. I'm not hiring the best salespeople in the world, and staffing up. We had to build strategy. I had to use all my experience and really download that and build the strategy. And then when your back's up against the wall, you got to pick up the phone, and you got to make some social posts, and you got to invest in a little bit of marketing, and you have to, when that customer is willing to talk, you got to pick up the phone and talk. And so that was it. It was agreeing to come on this journey of a RPM in a startup mode, and you have, when you're the guy, you have no choice. You have to make it happen. And so it was not easy, and now I love it. I challenge all our sales teams and resources to get me involved, and I want to help them right? And empower them to be really confident. And I think one of the best ways to teach sales is to have people listen and watch and participate and collaborate, right? Because they have great ideas too. And I'm constantly, changing the script or my pitch or how I approach different situations. I'm learning every day. And so, yeah, that was how I challenged myself, was really just to enter the startup, and you lived and died by the sale.
By this sale. I'm still shocked just at your numbers that you guys went from, you read an article, you get in front of Barry, you guys decide to do a deal, you're $5 million, now you're $200 million, Inc. 500. Let's say that's really exciting.
We love it. I'm having more fun today than I've had in my whole career. So I guess that's what keeps me going. It's fun, right? It's really fun. We have assembled just a wonderful team. We share that entrepreneurial spirit and that environment. We've empowered people, and we're having a ton of fun doing what we do. And I think that comes through to our customers, right? I think they hear and see the passion, and we're connecting trucking companies to available freight in the marketplace. So it's nothing new. We just created a unique culture and a very transparent system and process, and we're very aggressive. And so there's no secret to what we're doing. It's just a lot of hard work.
After our conversation, I kept thinking about Al's story about his dad, Big Al. He talked about three values that his dad wanted to leave behind: dream big, believe in yourself or believe in something bigger than yourself, never give up. Wasn't that a super powerful moment? I've got Kyle Hawk here. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, powerful is the right word. Doing a podcast like this, we're pretty strategic about the guests that we have on, and you obviously have an idea of where you want the conversation to go, but ultimately, you never really know what might pop up, during those conversations. And yeah, that was just really an incredibly emotional and powerful moment for Al to share that, and it was just so obvious that the impact and the legacy that his dad had left behind, and how that's still impacting Al and really his entire family to this day.
Yeah, it was. I was not expecting the conversation to go the direction that it went, but I think those were some really strong principles that he left behind, and you could tell it made a really big impact on Al.
And one of the things I was thinking about after that conversation is that, when we talk about mental toughness on this podcast, we're not really talking about like quick fixes. This isn't like, the 5 tips that are going to get you more mentally tough for your next sales call. You hear Al talk about it, and it's really about developing a legacy, right?
Yeah, I think he went. I think it's a legacy, and I think it's also kind of an evolution of growth that you can see that ultimately you want to take plant in your life and then be able to pass it on to your kids. I mean, those three. I think if every parent could pass those three things on to their kids, they'd be really happy. Dream big, believe in yourself, and never give up.
Yeah, and just to that point, it's kind of like I guess the takeaway here from me is that, I mean, it's not too late and it's not too early to start thinking about what that's going to look like. What do you want to leave behind? There's no right timeline for this other than right now is a great time to start thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, when I think about, I think about legacy, I think about Teddy Roosevelt and the legacy that he left to his kids. And really, you've got the two Roosevelt families that came from different branches, but there was definitely something in the water there. There was something in the family makeup that made that family tree so resilient and strong that
Mhm.
they were able to pass that on to their kids, because the Roosevelt family members are still not only legislating and still involved, but they're still involved in politics. They're still involved in day to day, happenings that happen in the world. Same thing with the Kennedys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fascinating, and this is big stuff to think about and kind of wrap your head around. I guess if you were gonna boil down like one takeaway here of what somebody can do tomorrow, what would that look like to you?
So I think the one thing that you can do is really perspective. I think that's the most important place to start, is really getting a perspective and understanding. And so I think, if you take what Al said, if you take the first one, dream big, I think that's a big piece of getting perspective, is having a dream that's bigger than the one that you have today, something that you can step into, and then really understanding that life happens for you, not to you. I think that's a significant piece of mental toughness, is that paradigm shift, is sort of moving away from, if you're a little kid and somebody takes your brownie, it's not that they took the brownie from you, it's that, hey, they probably needed the brownie. And I think making that little shift sort of makes everything else sort of step into place. I think it helps you, take being in a traffic situation. I heard somebody tell a story where they were behind somebody and they were just so irritated. This is kind of I don't know that it was so they were just really irritated that this guy was driving slow. But then they realized that they would have been a part of an accident had this guy not gotten in front of them.
Oh,
That they
wow.
probably would have been full blown into something that was ahead of them. So I think the first thing is really changing that mindset.
Yeah, really powerful stuff in this conversation. Really, really glad we had the chance to talk with Al and get his perspective.
Yeah, it was powerful to say the least. So thanks for dropping by, Kyle.
Yeah.
That's it for today. Remember, if you'd like some further reading on how to grow in mental toughness and become a better salesperson, you can download the Mental Toughness Playbook and get it for free by going to monsterconnect.com/podcast. And remember to subscribe to your favorite podcast app and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Until next time, don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do.